For 30 years, I scrubbed floors on my knees while watching my siblings open Christmas presents I wasn't allowed to touch. Every December 25th was the same ritual. Vernon and Patricia Rayfield would sit in their matching recliners, coffee in hand, smiling as Colton and Bridget tore through wrapping paper like wild animals. Me? I sat on the floor by the kitchen doorway, close enough to watch but far enough to know my place. "Dennis, those dishes won't wash themselves," Patricia would say, not even looking at me. "Christmas or not, work doesn't stop." I thought I was adopted. That's what they told me. That's what I believed. The unwanted baby their church guilt-tripped them into taking in. The mouth to feed who needed to earn every bite. For 3 decades, I believed this was just my lot in life. Some kids get loving families. Some kids get the Rayfields. But at Vernon's funeral, while I stood in the back row like the family shame I'd always been, a stranger in an expensive charcoal suit walked up to me. He was trembling, holding old documents against his chest like they were made of gold. He looked at me the way you'd look at a ghost, someone you'd given up on ever seeing again. "Dennis Rayfield?" he asked, though it sounded like he already knew the answer. "Yeah, that's me." He shook his head slowly, deliberately. "No. Your name is Christopher Thorne." The words hit me like ice water. This man, this complete stranger, stood there in a funeral home telling me my entire identity was a lie, but he wasn't done. He pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1994, and there it was. My face, younger but unmistakably mine, staring back from a front-page story. "Missing heir to Thorne fortune, reward now $93 million. "You weren't adopted," the man said, his voice breaking. "You were stolen. Your real parents never stopped searching. Your mother is still alive, Christopher, and she spent every single day of the last 30 years praying you'd come home. My name is Christopher Thorne, though for 30 years I answered to Dennis Rayfield. I'm 35 years old, and until recently I managed a hardware store in rural Montana, living paycheck to paycheck in a 1-bedroom apartment above a diner. My story isn't about finding out I was secretly rich. It's about finding out that every single person who was supposed to protect me chose to destroy me instead. It's about discovering that love I thought I never deserved was actually searching for me all along. The man in the suit was Winston Aldrich, a private investigator who'd been looking for me since I was 7 years old. Vernon Rayfield wasn't my adoptive father. He was my kidnapper. Patricia Rayfield wasn't a cold adoptive mother. She was my prison guard. And Colton and Bridget, the golden children who got everything while I got nothing, they were the biological kids of the people who stole me from a park in Boston when I was 5 years old. "Your mother's name is Eleanor," Winston said, tears running down his weathered face. "She built an empire with your father, hoping success would give them resources to find you. Every dollar they made went toward the search. The FBI, private investigators, age progression specialists, even psychics when they got desperate. They never gave up, Christopher, not once in 30 years. Vernon Rayfield was dead in a box 10 feet away from us, about to be buried with his secrets. But Patricia was alive, sitting in the front row in her black dress, playing the grieving widow. She'd made me call her Ma'am my entire life, never Mom. Now I knew why. Every time she looked at me, she saw the crime that could destroy her. I wasn't the unwanted adopted child. I was evidence. I was the proof of what happens when greed meets opportunity and conscience never shows up to the party. I was the boy whose real mother had been dying inside for 3 decades, whose father went to his grave with my baby picture in his wallet, whose inheritance sat in a trust fund growing larger every year I stayed missing. Winston handed me a photograph. It was recent, taken maybe a month ago. A woman in her 60s stood in front of a massive corporate building, and even from a distance, even through the grain of the photo, I could see she had my eyes. The same green that made the Rayfields always comment how I looked nothing like them. Because I didn't look like them. I looked like Eleanor Thorne, my mother, who, according to Winston, had attempted suicide twice in the years since I vanished, saved only by the hope that somewhere, somehow, I might still be breathing. "She needs to know you're alive," Winston said urgently. "She's hanging on by a thread, Christopher. The doctors say hope is the only thing keeping her heart beating. Will you come with me? Will you come home?" Home. The word meant nothing to me. Home was the barn where I slept some nights when Vernon was drunk and dangerous. Home was the apartment with the broken heater and the cockroaches I couldn't afford to exterminate. Home was anywhere the Rayfields weren't. But now this stranger was telling me home was a mansion in Boston, a mother who never gave up, and a fortune that had my name on it since birth. The funeral attendees were starting to file out. Patricia walked past us, and for just a second our eyes met. In 30 years, it was the first time she'd ever really looked at me. Not through me, not over me, but at me. And in that split second I saw recognition. I saw fear. I saw guilt so heavy it should have crushed her. She knew who I really was. She'd always known. Growing up in the Rayfield household in rural Montana meant understanding your place from day one. Vernon Rayfield ran a successful cattle ranch spanning 300 acres of prime grazing land, and Patricia managed the books with an iron grip on every penny that came through their accounts. They were respected in our small town of Copper Ridge, population 2,147. Vernon served on the church board. Patricia organized the annual Harvest Festival. Everyone thought they were good, God-fearing people who'd taken in an unwanted child out of Christian charity. The story they told everyone was simple and noble. They'd found me on their doorstep one winter morning in 1994, barely 5 years old, with nothing but the clothes on my back and a note that said, "Please take care of him. I can't anymore." No signature, no explanation, just abandonment wrapped in desperation. The sheriff, Patricia's cousin, had supposedly tried to find my biological parents but came up empty. So the Rayfields, already blessed with 2 children of their own, opened their home to me. "We didn't have to keep you," Vernon reminded me every time I asked for something. "Christian duty only goes so far, boy." Their house was beautiful. A sprawling ranch-style home with 5 bedrooms, though I slept in what used to be a storage room off the garage. It had a single window that faced the tool shed, no closet, and in winter the temperature dropped so low I could see my breath. Meanwhile, Colton's room had its own bathroom and a flat-screen TV he got for his 13th birthday. Bridget's room looked like something from a magazine, all pink and white with a canopy bed that cost more than I'd make in 3 months at my current job. Breakfast in the Rayfield house followed a strict hierarchy. Vernon got his eggs over easy with thick-cut bacon. Patricia took her coffee black with whole wheat toast. Colton and Bridget got whatever they wanted. Usually sugary cereal or pancakes Patricia would make fresh. I got what was left, if there was anything left. Most mornings I made do with stale bread and peanut butter I'd hide in my room for exactly such occasions. Dennis needs to learn that nothing in life is free, Patricia would tell her church friends when they'd comment on how thin I looked. "We're teaching him work ethic. It'll serve him better than handouts." My chores started at 4:30 a.m., feed the chickens, milk the cows, muck out the horse stalls, all before school, where I'd arrive exhausted and smelling faintly of manure, no matter how hard I scrubbed. Colton would pass me in the halls without acknowledgement, surrounded by his football teammates. Bridget would actively step away if I got too close, telling her friends I was just the help who lives with us. After school, when other kids had sports practice or hung out at the diner, I had more work. Mending fences, hauling feed, fixing whatever machinery Vernon had deliberately let break so I'd have something to occupy my time. He taught me to repair engines not out of fatherly guidance, but because he needed free labor. By the time I was 12, I could rebuild a tractor engine. By 15, I was doing all the maintenance on every vehicle they owned while Colton couldn't even change a tire. "You're lucky we feed you," Vernon said one night when I asked why I couldn't join the family for Thanksgiving, dinner at the main table. "Your own mother didn't want you." What makes you think you deserve to sit with real family? The cruelty was calculated. Patricia kept exactly one photo of me in the house, taken when I was about 7. In it, I stood apart from the family, off to the side like an afterthought. She'd show it to visitors as proof of their charity. "We treat him like one of our own," she'd lie while I served lemonade to her book club, invisible as furniture. School was my only escape. Teachers liked me because I worked hard, studied harder. Mrs. Henderson, my 8th grade English teacher, once pulled me aside. "Dennis, you're bright enough for college. Have you thought about your future?" "Kids like me don't go to college," I'd told her, repeating what Vernon had drilled into my head. She'd looked at me strangely then, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Years later, I wondered if she suspected something was wrong. But in small towns, you don't question families like the Rayfields. You don't rock boats that have been floating steady for generations. The difference between me and the Rayfield children was most obvious at Christmas. They got laptops, cars, vacation trips. I got work boots and maybe a used winter coat from Goodwill. But what hurt more than the gifts was the pretense. Patricia would hand me my single-wrapped present with a smile for the church friends they'd invited over, then turn cold the moment the guests left. By 18, I'd saved every penny Vernon grudgingly paid me for what he called extra work, though it was all extra since regular work was just expected. $2,000 hidden in a coffee can got me a security deposit on a cramped apartment above Hazel's Diner in town. The day I moved out, Patricia's only words were, "Don't expect to come crawling back when you fail." But I didn't fail. I got a job at Brennan's Hardware, where Sherman Brennan treated me with more kindness in one day than the Rayfields had shown in 18 years. "You're a good worker, Dennis," he'd say. "Reliable, honest. That's rare these days." I built a life from nothing because I thought nothing was all I deserved. Every night in that tiny apartment, I'd wonder about my birth mother. What kind of woman abandons her child on a doorstep in winter? What was so wrong with me that even she couldn't love me? These questions haunted me for 30 years, poison the Rayfields had poured into my soul one drop at a time. Except none of it was true. There was no doorstep, no desperate note, no mother who didn't want me. Just Vernon and Patricia Rayfield, 2 criminals who stole a child and raised him as slave labor while collecting sympathy from their community for their Christian charity. They built their reputation on my suffering, their prosperity on my stolen life. Vernon's death came suddenly on a Tuesday morning in September. Massive heart attack while branding cattle, dead before he hit the ground. The whole town turned out for the funeral, packing the First Baptist Church to capacity. I stood in the back row, uninvited to sit with the family despite 30 years under their roof. "This section is for blood relatives, Dennis," Patricia had said that morning, her voice sharp as winter wind. "You understand." I understood perfectly. Even in death, Vernon commanded the narrative. The pastor called him a pillar of the community, a devoted father, a Christian example of generosity. He and Patricia opened their home to a child in need, Reverend Morrison announced, gesturing vaguely in my direction. That takes a special kind of heart. The congregation murmured their amens while I fought the urge to vomit. Special kind of heart. If they only knew how that heart delighted in cruelty, how it calculated exactly how much food I could survive on, how it never once showed me an ounce of genuine affection. That's when I noticed the stranger. He stood out like a diamond in a coal mine, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. While everyone else focused on the service, he kept staring at me, pulling out his phone to check something, then staring again. His hands trembled as he held what looked like old documents against his chest. After the service, the crowd moved toward the cemetery. Patricia walked past me, flanked by Colton and Bridget, all 3 dressed in expensive black clothes that screamed inheritance money was already being spent. The stranger hung back, waiting until most people had left. Dennis Rayfield? His voice shook like a man about to deliver news that would change everything. "Yeah, that's me." He stepped closer, and I could see sweat on his forehead despite the cool September air. "No, it's not. Your name is Christopher Thorne. I'm Winston Aldrich, a private investigator. I've been searching for you for 28 years. The words hit like physical blows. My chest tightened. The church suddenly felt too small, too hot. "You're mistaken. I'm adopted, but my name has always been Dennis. You weren't adopted." Winston pulled out a leather folder with shaking hands. "You were taken. Kidnapped from a park in Boston when you were 5 years old. Your parents, your real parents, are Eleanor and James Thorne. They own Thorne Industries. They never stopped searching." He spread newspaper clippings on the pew between us. The first headline screamed, "5-year-old heir vanishes from Beacon Hill Park." Below was a photo that stopped my breath. It was me, younger but unmistakably me, wearing clothes I recognized from hazy dreams I'd dismissed as imagination. Another clipping from 5 years ago. "Thorne family increases reward to $93 million for information on missing son." "This is insane," I managed to say, though my throat felt lined with sandpaper. "The Rayfields found me on their doorstep. There was a note. The sheriff investigated." Winston's face darkened. "The sheriff was Patricia's cousin, right? Robert Henley? He died 10 years ago, but we found his widow. She confirmed he helped cover it up, falsified the reports, created the adoption papers." My legs threatened to give out. I sat hard on the pew, my mind racing through 30 years of memories, reframing everything. Every cruel word, every withheld meal, every reminder that I wasn't real family suddenly made horrifying sense. "Vernon Rayfield worked as a contractor in Boston 30 years ago," Winston continued, his voice steady but urgent. "He was part of the crew renovating the playground at Beacon Hill Park, the same park you disappeared from. The week you vanished, Vernon suddenly quit his job, told his boss there was a family emergency back in Montana. He bought the ranch with cash 2 months later. $90,000 in cash, Dennis. Where does an unemployed contractor get $90,000 in cash in 1994? The room spun. Through the window I could see the funeral procession heading to the cemetery. Patricia in her widow's veil, playing the grieving wife while her husband's victim sat in the church he'd fooled for 3 decades. "Your mother is alive," Winston said softly. "Eleanor Thorne. She's barely holding on. The doctors say hope is the only thing keeping her going. She's been in and out of hospitals, panic attacks, depression, 2 suicide attempts. Your father, James, died 3 years ago. His last words to me were to never stop looking for you." Winston pulled out another photo, this one recent. A woman in her 60s stood in front of a glass building, and even from a distance I could see she had my eyes, the same unusual green the Rayfields always commented on, the feature that marked me as an outsider in every family photo. "She needs to know you're alive, Christopher. She spent 30 years wondering if you're hurt, if you're scared, if you remember her at all. She keeps your bedroom exactly as it was the day you disappeared. Every toy, every book waiting for you to come home." I thought about my storage room off the garage, the single window facing the tool shed, the winters spent seeing my breath indoors. Meanwhile, somewhere in Boston, a bedroom had been waiting for me for 3 decades, preserved by a mother whose love survived longer than my entire stolen life. If this is true, why didn't anyone find me sooner? "Vernon was smart," Winston explained. "Changed your name immediately, moved to a small town where no one asked questions. You were young enough that your memories faded. He probably told you stories about being adopted before you could even remember the truth. We tracked thousands of adopted children over the years, but the Rayfields' paperwork looked legitimate on the surface. It wasn't until Robert Henley's widow contacted us last month that we finally had a real lead." Patricia appeared in the church doorway, looking for stragglers. Our eyes met across the sanctuary. For the first time in my life, I saw fear flicker across her face. She knew exactly who Winston was. She knew why he was here. And she knew her 30-year performance as a charitable Christian woman was about to end. "We need proof," I told Winston, though my heart already knew the truth. "DNA proof." "Already arranged," he said. "But Christopher, we need to move carefully. Patricia is dangerous. If she realizes we know, she might run or destroy evidence. There are legal implications here that go beyond just kidnapping." I couldn't sleep that night. Winston had given me a burner phone and told me to act normal until the DNA test results came back. "Don't confront Patricia," he'd warned. "Don't change your routine. We need solid evidence before we move." But how do you act normal when your entire life has been revealed as a lie? I lay in my apartment above Hazel's diner, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying 30 years of memories with new understanding. The way Vernon always paid me in cash for ranch work, never a check. The way Patricia burned all the old documents in a bonfire when I was 10, claiming they were decluttering. The way they never let me get a passport when the school offered a trip to Canada. At 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to work early. Sherman Brennan was already there, inventory clipboard in hand. "You look like hell, son," he said, studying my face. "Everything all right?" "Vernon's funeral was yesterday," I said, which was true, but not the truth. Sherman nodded slowly. "Can't say I'll miss him. Man never had a kind word for you in all the years I knew him. You're better off without that family, Dennis." If only he knew I'd never had a family at all. Winston called that afternoon while I was stocking paint cans. "Can you meet me at the Riverside Motel tonight? Room 12. We need to collect the DNA sample and discuss next steps." The motel was 20 miles outside town, chosen specifically so no one from Copper Ridge would see us. Winston had set up a mobile command center in his room, complete with laptops, files, and boxes of documents dating back 3 decades. "Your case never went cold for the FBI," he explained while swabbing my cheek for DNA. "Every year on your birthday, your mother would call them, begging for updates. She hired me 15 years ago when the FBI essentially gave up. I've been following leads ever since." He showed me more photos. Christopher Thorne's 5th birthday party, 2 weeks before the kidnapping. I was opening presents surrounded by other children, my parents crouched beside me, their faces glowing with joy. There was a video too, though Winston warned me before playing it. "This might be hard to watch." My mother's voice filled the room. "Christopher, tell Daddy what you want to be when you grow up." The little boy on screen, the boy who was me, jumped up and down. "A superhero, I save people." My throat closed. Somewhere in my mind, that memory existed, buried under 30 years of Vernon telling me I was worthless. "The DNA results will take 3 days," Winston said. "In the meantime, I need you to think. Do you remember anything from before? Even fragments could help build the case." I closed my eyes. Red rain boots. I remember red rain boots that I loved. And a woman singing something about mockingbirds. Winston's eyes lit up. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. These boots. The picture showed the same red boots I'd dreamed about for 30 years. They were sitting in an evidence bag labeled Christopher Thorne, items worn, day of disappearance. "Your mother sang you that song every night," he said softly. "Mockingbird. She mentioned it in every interview she gave, hoping it might trigger your memory if you heard it." The next 3 days passed in surreal slow motion. I went to work, smiled at customers, ate lunch at the diner like always, but Patricia started acting strange. She came into the hardware store twice, something she'd never done in the 5 years I'd worked there. "Dennis," she said during her second visit, "I've been thinking. With Vernon gone, perhaps it's time we acted more like a proper family. Would you come to dinner Sunday?" In 30 years, she'd never once invited me to Sunday dinner. I'm busy, I said, turning back to my work. Her voice turned cold. You know, I found some old papers in Vernon's office. Adoption papers. Would be a shame if something happened to them. It was a threat. She knew something was happening. That night, I called Winston. She's getting suspicious. She mentioned destroying documents. The DNA results came back early, Winston said. 99.97% match with Eleanor Thorne. You're definitely Christopher. The FBI is moving in tomorrow morning. I sat down hard on my second-hand couch. Despite expecting it, the confirmation still hit like a sledgehammer. There's something else, Winston continued. Your mother wants to speak with you. She's been waiting by the phone since I told her we might have found you. Are you ready for that? Was I ready to speak to a stranger who was my mother? To hear the voice of the woman who'd been searching for me while I was scrubbing floors and sleeping in a storage room? Put her on, I said. The voice that came through the phone was soft, broken, hopeful. Christopher, is it really you? I don't know how to answer that, I said honestly. I've been Dennis for so long. That's okay, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. You can be whoever you need to be. I just need to know you're safe. Are you safe? Safe. Such a simple word that I'd never really understood. I am now. The FBI says I can't see you until after tomorrow. But Christopher, I need you to know something. Every single day for 30 years I've loved you. Every birthday I baked a cake. Every Christmas I wrapped presents. Every night I sang to your empty room. You were never forgotten. You were never replaced. You were always my baby boy. I broke then, 30 years of suppressed emotion flooding out. This stranger loved me more than the people who'd raised me ever had. This woman I couldn't remember had never stopped fighting for me, while the people I called family had never fought for me at all. The FBI arrived at dawn. 6 black SUVs rolling into Copper Ridge like an invading army. I watched from my apartment window as they surrounded the Rayfield Ranch. Patricia was in her kitchen making coffee when they knocked, probably planning another day of playing the grieving widow. Within minutes, she was in handcuffs. Winston picked me up an hour later. She's not talking yet, but she will. The evidence is overwhelming. At the sheriff's station, now swarming with federal agents, I stood behind one-way glass watching Patricia in the interrogation room. She looked smaller without her church dress and perfect posture. Just a 70-year-old woman facing the consequences of 3 decades of lies. The FBI agent, a woman named Agent Chen, laid out the evidence methodically. DNA results. Financial records showing Vernon's mysterious cash windfall in 1994. Testimony from Robert Henley's widow confirming the sheriff helped falsify adoption documents. Phone records showing Vernon had called the Thorne residence 12 times in the weeks before the kidnapping, likely scoping out the family's routine. Patricia stayed silent for 3 hours. Then Agent Chen played the video of 5-year-old me at my birthday party, and something in Patricia's face cracked. Turn it off, she whispered. That's Christopher Thorne, Agent Chen said. The boy you've been calling Dennis for 30 years, the boy whose parents you destroyed. Patricia's hand shook. We didn't plan it. Vernon saw an opportunity. Tell me everything. The story that poured out was worse than I'd imagined. Vernon had been part of the construction crew at Beacon Hill Park, watching wealthy families play with their children while he struggled with mounting gambling debts. He'd noticed the Thorne family's routine, how the nanny would sometimes get distracted talking to other caregivers. One day, he saw his chance. I was just supposed to wait in the truck, Patricia said, her voice hollow. Vernon grabbed the boy while the nanny was turned away. It happened in seconds. We were going to ask for ransom, just enough to cover Vernon's debts and start fresh. But then the news exploded, the reward, the FBI everywhere. We couldn't return him without getting caught. So you kept him, Agent Chen said flatly. We moved immediately. Vernon's cousin in Montana had just died, left us enough for a down payment on the ranch. We told everyone we'd found the boy abandoned, Robert helped with the paperwork. He owed Vernon money too. And you raised him as your servant, I said from behind the glass, though she couldn't hear me. We gave him food and shelter, Patricia continued, as if that justified everything. More than some kids get. Agent Chen pulled out photos of my childhood room in Boston, the one my parents had preserved. This is what he should have had: parents who loved him. His own room, an education, a trust fund worth millions. Instead, you gave him a storage room and treated him like livestock. Patricia's composure finally shattered completely. You don't understand what it was like. Every day wondering if someone would recognize him. Every day fearing the FBI would show up. We couldn't love him. Love would have made us weak. We had to keep him at a distance to survive. You tortured a child to protect yourselves, Agent Chen said. Colton and Bridget arrived then, demanding to see their mother. When the FBI explained the situation, Bridget collapsed in tears while Colton stood frozen, staring at me through the glass. You knew, I said, stepping into the room where they waited. You had to know something was wrong. We thought you were adopted, Colton said weakly. Mom always said your birth mother was a drug addict who abandoned you. And that justified treating me like garbage? He had no answer. Bridget couldn't even look at me. Patricia was formally charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, and child abuse. The FBI had also uncovered evidence of Vernon's other crimes, including embezzlement from his Boston construction job and the children's hospital project he'd stolen materials from. The ranch, bought with stolen money, would be seized. That afternoon, Winston drove me to the airport. Your mother's flying in. She couldn't wait another day. The private jet landed at the small regional airport just after sunset. I stood on the tarmac, my hands shaking, watching the door open. Eleanor Thorne descended the stairs slowly, as if afraid I might disappear if she moved too quickly. She was smaller than I'd expected, frailer than her photos suggested, but her eyes, those green eyes that matched mine perfectly, were fierce with a love that had survived 30 years of hell. "Christopher?" she said, reaching out tentatively. I nodded, unable to speak. She crossed the distance between us in 3 quick steps and pulled me into an embrace that felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. She smelled like expensive perfume and something else, something familiar that tugged at memories I'd thought were dreams. "My baby," she sobbed into my chest. "My beautiful boy. I'm so sorry we couldn't find you sooner." "It's not your fault," I managed to say. She pulled back, studying my face with wonder. "You have your father's jawline, his hands, but those eyes are mine." She touched my face gently. "Do you remember anything at all?" "Red boots," I said, "and someone singing about mockingbirds." Her face crumpled. "You loved those boots. You wore them everywhere, even when it wasn't raining. And that song, I sang it every night, every single night, even after you were gone." She pulled out her phone and showed me a video from last week. It was her in what was clearly my childhood room, singing the mockingbird song to an empty bed, the same red boots sitting on a shelf behind her. I never stopped, Christopher. I never gave up hope that somewhere you were alive and you might remember. Patricia Rayfield got 25 years in federal prison. At 70, it was effectively a life sentence. During her sentencing, she showed no remorse, only saying, "I gave him a roof and taught him to work. That's more than his real parents would have done, spoiling him with money he didn't earn." The judge's response was swift and harsh. "You stole a child from loving parents and subjected him to 30 years of psychological torture. You destroyed 3 lives out of greed. 25 years is merciful." Colton and Bridget lost everything. The ranch was seized as proceeds of crime. The FBI found Vernon had embezzled over $200,000 throughout his career, funding their comfortable lifestyle with stolen money. Colton came to see me once before I left Montana. "I need you to know something," he said, standing awkwardly in my apartment. "When we were kids, I heard Mom and Dad arguing one night. Dad said something about if anyone finds out about the boy. Mom told him to never mention it again. I should have known. I should have said something. Why didn't you?" He looked at his feet. "Because life was easier with you taking all the hits. Every time Dad was angry at you, he wasn't angry at me. I let you suffer so I could have it easy. I'm sorry, Dennis. I mean, Christopher." It was the first time anyone in that family had ever apologized to me. Moving to Boston was like landing on another planet. Eleanor had maintained my childhood room for 30 years, but she didn't pressure me to stay in the family mansion. Instead, she helped me find my own apartment nearby while I adjusted to this new reality. The trust fund my father had left me had grown to over $40 million, separate from the company holdings. Numbers that felt imaginary to someone who'd survived on minimum wage. But money wasn't what healed me. It was Eleanor herself. She never pushed, never demanded I call her Mom, or pretend the 30 years hadn't happened. Instead, she simply showed up. Every morning, she'd text asking if I wanted coffee. Every evening, she'd check if I'd eaten dinner. Small, consistent acts of care that I'd never experienced before. "Your father would have loved to see the man you became," she told me one evening as we looked through photo albums. "You survived what would have broken most people. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You worked hard when you had every reason to give up. That's not despite what they did to you. That's who you are at your core." I started therapy twice a week with a specialist in recovered abduction cases. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that the Rayfields hadn't just stolen my childhood. They'd tried to steal my sense of self-worth. "They needed you to believe you were worthless," she explained. "If you believed you deserved better, you might have questioned the story. Your survival mechanism was to accept their version of reality. Now you get to write your own." Sherman Brennan called me last month. "Heard everything on the news. Hell of a thing, Christopher. You coming back to visit?" "Maybe someday," I told him. "Not yet." "Well, when you do, remember something. You were the best worker I ever had, and that had nothing to do with those monsters who raised you. That work ethic, that integrity that came from inside you. Money doesn't change that. You earned every bit of good coming your way. Eleanor and I have dinner every Sunday now, not because we have to, but because we choose to. She tells me stories about my father, about the life they'd planned for me. I tell her about the man I became without them, the strength I found in the darkness. We're building something new from the ruins of what was stolen. The Thorn Industries board wanted me to take over immediately, but I'm taking business classes first. I want to earn it, I told Eleanor, not just inherit it. She smiled at that. You're definitely your father's son. He said the same thing when his father offered him the company. The fortune, the company, the Boston society life waiting for me, it all feels surreal. But the greatest gift isn't the money. It's knowing that while I was sleeping in a storage room, convinced I was unwanted, two people loved me desperately. While Patricia was telling me I was lucky to have scraps, my real parents were spending millions trying to find me. Eleanor donated the $93 million reward to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Other families are still searching, she said. Maybe this helps them find what we found. Last week, I drove past the Rayfield Ranch. It's up for federal auction, weeds already taking over Patricia's perfect garden. The storage room where I spent 18 winters is visible from the road, that single window facing the tool shed. I don't hate that room anymore. A boy named Dennis survived in there, did his best with the lies he was given, and somehow kept his humanity intact despite everything they threw at him. That boy, the one who got up before dawn every day believing he was worthless, he saved Christopher Thorne. He kept him alive, kept him working, kept him moving forward until the truth could find him. I'm grateful to Dennis Rayfield. He wasn't real, but his strength was. Now I'm Christopher Thorne, learning to be the man my real parents always believed I could be. Every morning, I wake up in a bed that's mine, in a life that's mine, with a name that's mine. The Rayfields stole 30 years, but they couldn't steal my future. They tried to convince me I was nothing, but it turns out I was everything to someone. Some stories end with justice. Some end with reunions. Mine ends with something simpler. The knowledge that love can survive 30 years of separation, lies can't bury truth forever, and sometimes the life you were meant to live is just waiting for you to claim it. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of truth and the strength of families separated by circumstances beyond their control, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps these stories reach those who might be searching for their own answers. Comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories of resilience, reunion, and redemption. Thank you for listening to my journey from Dennis to Christopher, from stolen to found, from surviving to truly living.